So welcome to Clarity TV. And today we're recording another episode. And today we have Tracey Grove. Tracey is an executive coach, just like I am. She has a PCC, that means a professional coaching certificate. And she's focused on helping leaders create resilient, high-performing organizations. She's also the author of our common book that we're going to talk about during our interview. But what I love about Tracey, what caught my attention as we invited her to join Clarity TV, is this concept of resiliency in a stressful world. So welcome, Tracey. Thank you for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Dolores. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.
So let's just jump right into this because I think I'm always fascinated to hear the story of how we become who we are, right? Mm-hmm. And so tell me about what called you to this work? What made you come into the coaching space?
It's quite a long, convoluted story, but essentially, I had been working in the corporate space for a number of years, and I'd been in companies from the size of 5 people all the way through to over 100,000 people. And what I noticed throughout my journey in corporate was that people were stressed. There was a lot of very unhappy, fear-based culture being built. And I saw some really great people just implode, be completely destroyed by these environments and not know how to deal with it, and saw good people turn on each other in order to survive these fear-based environments. Mm-hmm. And it got me curious about how can we help people to become more resilient in the face of a stressful environment? Mm-hmm. Because let's face it, the reality is stress isn't going anywhere. Mm-hmm. You may not be able to change your environment, but you can change your response to that environment. And so I started to study and learn a lot about hardiness and how people can build resilience, not only in the face of something that we would consider trauma, for example, but in the face of everyday stressors. You know, I talk about this Taming the Saber-Tooth concept, and it's really about the fact that the saber-tooth has just evolved into something that's different. Now it's that email, or it's that tough customer, or it's that difficult client. It could be traffic. It could be, a tough conversation with your kid. All of these things cause us stress. And this fascinating thing to me that I learned was that our brains respond to this stress the same way they used to respond when a saber-tooth was chasing us around when we were all in caves. Mm-hmm. So the interesting thing is our brain, from an evolutionary standpoint, hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. The stresses in the environment has. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to find ways to help people to deal with that stress. And that's what really motivated me to become a coach.
And so let me ask you this. Tell me about an experience or a project or maybe even an accomplishment that you consider has been one of the most significant in your life.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had an interesting experience that I think set me on this path to wanting to learn a lot more about resilience. My husband and I are originally from South Africa, and we had what was considered a traumatic experience in our lives that really should have taken our lives. We were hijacked, or what I think it's called carjacking here now, in the driveway of our house. And I talk about this a little bit in the book. And at that time in South Africa, really the way that these gangs operated was they didn't leave a victim behind. They would basically execute you on their way out the door so that they could get away with the crime. This was different for us, that we actually survived our experience. And so it got me thinking how I could help people survive things outside of that tough experience. And I think the reason that we actually survived was that we had bonded and formed a relationship with a security guard that monitored our environment in our neighborhood. A lot of the South African neighborhoods are in what they call secure environments.
Like Argentina is the same way.
Exactly. Yeah. So he had been bribed or coerced or threatened in some way to allow this particular gang to come into our neighborhood to follow us in, to be able to hijack us. But we had always been very kind to him. We had always given him good meals in the summertime. We'd given him hot soup in the wintertime. It was very hot in the summer. He was in a little, and I suspect that he negotiated for our lives, which is the only reason that my husband and I survived this experience, because the police were completely flummoxed by the fact that this particular gang didn't shoot us on their way out.
Wow.
So this whole experience just got me to thinking about empathy and the connection of empathy with resilience. Because that led us into an entirely different path in our lives. And we had to be resilient in a number of ways, moving to different countries, starting our lives over, etc., making life choices that were different. But not only that, I think we learned that there was a different perspective to life and a different appreciation for life. And so I wanted to pass that gift of resilience on to others.
And I think this kind of, is a great segue to my next question, which is, what is something that has always been with you, either unconsciously or consciously? And maybe, even you sharing this experience, it said that, the reason why we're still alive is because we practice empathy, like naturally. That's something that's who you are. And it sounds like who you are is you believe in at the base of every single thing that we do and how we operate, there's a human relating to another human being, no matter their role. So tell me about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think one of the things that this whole experience taught me was this notion of seeing the whole person. Is incredibly powerful. I think when you're in a situation like that, often there's a dehumanizing aspect that happens when it comes to being victimized by somebody or being the perpetrator of a crime against somebody else. You almost have to not see them as human in order to be able to do that. And I think looking the hijackers in the eye and actually seeing them as human beings, for a moment, I think it changed their perspective of us. And to the same extent has been something that I try to do all my life. And I think really I've been curious about people and I find them fascinating. And I think getting to know people and observing people and seeing the way that they interact every day has just been a fascinating journey for me. And I think just that level of interest in other people is what brings a sense of empathy that I think we lose in a very fast-paced world. And so I wanted to help leaders in particular to bring that back into the workplace, to help them to see that the people that work for you are people with lives.
And that,
resources.
And that behind their behavior, the behavior is just a shield of fear. And you can see past that shield and see the human being, even the human being behind your kidnapper.
Absolutely.
It's a powerful, powerful tool, yeah. There's actually a book, that I came to mind that you may have read, but maybe your audience or your clients. It's a fairly new book. I think that the Tattooist is the name, but it's about the tattoo. I wouldn't call him artist, but the prisoner that used to tattoo prisoners at Auschwitz.
Oh, interesting.
And he talks about, he survived concentration camp and was able to build a family, and he saw everybody as people. Wow. And he leveraged relationships to survive and to save people within the camps.
What an amazing story.
Yeah.
It really is powerful.
So let me ask you this. Let's talk more about your work and the work that you do with leaders. What does resiliency mean to you?
I think, if you define resilience in the technical term, it's all about responding to or bouncing back from adversity or trauma. I think about resilience as being able to anticipate the fact that you're always going to have this in your life. And having a set of tools and a set of processes and a set of self-soothing options, if you like, to help you to navigate through the human side of change, because we're all dealing with change every day. And as human beings, when we deal with any kind of change, whether it be something as simple as, changing jobs, all the way to something as complicated as losing a spouse or a very, very close family member, this is all seen as trauma. From the point of view of our brains and our bodies. So knowing that we are in this space, that stress is going to be coming at us all the time, how we can actually build a sense of just an approach that allows you to be more healthy in your response so that you're not reacting. So for me, resilience it's a journey. It's not something that happens overnight. I always say to my clients, you don't just switch this on. You don't go to a seminar and then suddenly, oh, great, I'm resilient. I'm done. I'm good. It's a journey. It's a lifelong journey for me. It always has been. I think it always will be. I think you learn. And I often say, you never become perfect at it. It's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say it's very important to practice because it takes persistence and it takes grit to really build resilience. And in the process of building resilience, you build courage. And that allows you to do things like overcome fear. It allows you to be true to who you are and allows you to understand that setbacks are an inevitable part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And fear is just part of the human condition.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can move through it and understand it and overcome it, you can build resilience. So that's what it means.
And let me ask you this. So why is resiliency or becoming resilient such a key ingredient for today's leaders?
I think we're living in a stressful world. If you think about digital transformation, it is transforming industries. Nobody's immune to this. The pace of business is incredibly fast and only getting more competitive. Leaders have to really inspire and engage employees in new ways in order to keep them motivated. We have a new upcoming generation of millennials who are not necessarily motivated by the same things that our generation was motivated by. So how do you engage these individuals? How do you get them excited about coming to work every day? And how do you as a leader then bring that sense of meaning and purpose and belonging back to the organization? I think it's more challenging now than it ever has been. And I think in an area of challenge, of market shifts, of huge global dynamics that are largely more competitive than they have ever been, for leaders this is really, really important to be authentic, to build their sense of a platform of humility and a platform of vulnerability that enables them to move forward with their people versus over their people.
Over the people, yeah. So can you think of an example, maybe a client, maybe yourself, like an actual situation where this came to play?
Oh yeah, there's so many.
Sure, I can think of many.
I have a lot of examples actually in the book, both from my experience and some clients sprinkled through there. Obviously, names changed to protect the innocent, but really the one of the key ones that I found has been really valuable to me and was a really big learning for me was this notion of embracing epic failure. So we're all very, very afraid of failure. And I always say it's not necessarily about failure. It's about not succeeding. And if you don't succeed, that's okay because you learn from it. If you want to say that you failed, the only real failure is not picking yourself up and carrying on. So if you give up, you failed. If you've not succeeded, you've just learned. And one of the lessons that I learned earlier on in my career, I was leading a small team. And I had we'd done a lot of work around building an incredible website for an events program that we ran. It was probably about 200 or 300 pages of content, a lot of work. We were migrating it. And it was very late in the project. We were on target. Everything was great. My web developer walked into the room. She was in tears, absolutely devastated. This is not a woman who cries. She was a very, together person. She's in tears. What happened? She says, I came in last night and I was backing up our work. I accidentally backed up over all the work we had done over the past month. So she'd literally taken us from the end of the project all the way back to the beginning. This poor woman was absolutely devastated. Now we still had a deadline to meet, so I had a choice. It was, well, we could either complain about this and wring our hands, or we can fix the problem. And so I called the team in, and they were obviously exhausted. They'd been working long hours. They were feeling good because they were at the end of the project, and I had to tell them that we weren't actually at the end of the project. We were starting over. And so I explained the situation, and I was so proud of them. Not a single one of them said, how did this happen? Or looked at this poor developer who was in tears in the corner and, berated her or made her feel worse than she already did. They all just nodded their heads and said, okay, we'll get on with it. Divided up the content. We had all of that content re-inputted into the system in 48 hours. Wow. Because the team pulled together. And afterwards, the developer came to me and she said, I am so incredibly amazed that none of you yelled at me.
Mm.
Nobody made me feel bad. And I feel so good about working on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And so to see this team embrace that failure, if you like, we learned from it. We did a post-mortem and we learned what we could do better next time, how to avoid that problem in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And also we found a whole lot of mistakes that we'd made the original time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You
So
always get it better.
Totally. So
Yeah.
it was a much better product at the end. So even though it was a painful process for both the web developer and the rest of the team, I think as a team we came together and we bonded over this. We learned from it and we moved forward as a better, wiser, and stronger team as a result. So I think if you can embrace epic failure, you can learn there are so many pieces of gold that you can mine from it.
And talk about, you were just starting to say about the need that leaders have today to motivate and also keep their employees and the millennials, if you want to engage.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about engagement. If you are able to deal with such elegance, a situation like that, the team will follow you to the end of the earth.
Absolutely.
Right? Because why would you change and work for another team when you know what to expect and how you will be loved in some way? Because love is not loving when you're in your best. Love is when you can love all of it.
Absolutely. All the ugly bits, everything. Yes.
Every part of it is
Yeah.
part of, that's real love. Otherwise it's very easy.
It's so true.
So let me ask you this. What are some myths that people have around the concept of resiliency? You talked a little bit about, okay, I'll go to a conference, listen to it, I learn it intellectually, and then I have it. That's probably part of it, but go ahead.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a couple of things. One is that there's also this notion of that you can impose it on other people.
Uh-huh.
I think resilience is a choice. Everything that we do is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this notion of locus of control that psychologists talk about a lot. And so I think a lot of people think, well, I'm just not that kind of personality. I don't have that capability. My life is out of control. External factors are taking over and things just happen because they happen to me. And I just have to shrug my shoulders and deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't subscribe to that. I subscribe to the fact that you are in control because of the choices that you make. Inevitably, things are going to happen. But I think resilience allows you to find ways around those situations because it shifts your perspective of those situations. And so I think the thing about resilience that I think a lot of people don't realize is that it is a skill that you can learn, anyone can learn, and that it is a muscle. So the more you use it, the more you keep it. But if you don't use it, you lose it. And you don't have to only use it when you've had some kind of difficulty or traumatic event. A lot of where I focus on resilience is on building this optimistic mindset. So one of the things that is really, really important in my work is helping people to see the good part of their lives. We get so caught up in all the day-to-day stuff and the drama and just the noise. And we're all at some point going to be thinking, poor me.
Well, I think that's what I'm hearing is I think the myth of I can be a victim and resilient at the same time. And what I'm hearing is like, the victim mentality does not accommodate resiliency.
No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, we promote the victim mentality in society today.
Yeah.
People are rewarded for being the victim.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, that fosters a sense of a lack of control or a lack of making the right choices, or even being able to say, no, that's actually not okay. And I'm not going to tolerate it, but I'm not going to behave badly because of it. So yes, you're absolutely right. I think that there is this confusion of, apathy is not acceptance to me.
Yeah. And surviving is not resiliency.
Exactly. You have to thrive. But in order to thrive, you have to actually step up and fight the saber-tooth, because the saber-tooth's always going to be there.
Yeah.
So you actually have to be willing to get into the battle with the saber-tooth. And you do that by arming yourself with all of these tools around building an optimistic mindset, focusing on what's happening in your life with gratitude. All of these things build your resilience and build your sense of self-control and purpose.
That's awesome. So I kind of know the answer to this question, which is, what are you excited about for this year? Tell us about that book that's coming out.
I am so excited. It's interesting. I wrote the book in a pretty short period of time, but it's been rattling around in my head literally for the last 20
Years.
years. And so I think when I finally got sat down to write it, it just all came out. So it's called Taming the Saber-Tooth, Resilient Leadership in a Stressful World. And it's really focused on building a picture for leaders of how they can lead in this digital economy and in this new challenging environment, but lead from the heart. And so that they can actually bring a sense of empathy and compassion, humility and vulnerability to their organization. And in doing so, they don't actually become seen as weak or ineffective. They're actually seen as trusted leaders who are respected and are seen as strong. And those are the leaders that people want to follow. And a lot of this is about communication. A lot of it is about having courage in difficult times, because we all know that leaders have to deal with this. But then the other half of the book is really focused on how do these leaders nurture their own recovery from stress? Because that old saying, when you're on a plane, the steward comes up and says, right, folks, here's the safety briefing. Please put on your own oxygen mask before you put on anyone else's or help other people. The reality is, if you passed out on the floor of the plane, you can't help anybody. So for leaders, and frankly for anybody who wants to lead or wants to live a more purposeful life, having that ability to put on your own mask first enables you to then help others. And that mask takes the form of nurturing your resources, your recovery from stress, things like how you eat, how you sleep, even just breathing well, taking time out to meditate or just have some mindful moments, being present. And all of these things can actually help you build high performance in every area of your life, because it's less about let's all sit under a tree and meditate and get in touch with ourselves. It's more about high performance. How do you get to the peak of who you are and bring the best of you to every part of your life, whether you're in business, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're somebody who stays at home and looks after a family. Every walk of life can actually benefit from thinking about these things. But for leaders in particular, I think it's something that is put on the back burner because they're so busy in the day-to-day just trying to run their business and keep their heads above water. So helping them to do that is super, super important to me. And I think really holding them accountable and letting them hold their people accountable for doing the same. It helps us all. If we can change ourselves, we can then change the world just one person at a time. So I'm hopeful, if the book is well received, that it helps people to just get a sense of you have a choice and you have the power to control your response to stress.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully send me the link, and we'll publish it as well. Maybe we'll talk about this, but we're happy to help you promote it. So let me ask you one last question. We're building the Clarity TV library. So what's that one book we must all read?
Oh, goodness. So I just finished reading probably the scariest book I've ever read. It's called Why We Sleep. It's a really interesting book. It's really about the way sleep impacts every part of our lives, physically, emotionally, and mentally, and how chronically sleep-deprived Americans are. In fact, I don't think it's only America, but I think America is potentially the tip of the spear where this is concerned. Incredibly powerful book, very scary. Talks about how we can change our sleep habits and what we need to be thinking about when it comes to the quality of the sleep that we have. And as somebody who extols the nature of, the virtues of sleep to my clients, I found it fascinating. It's a very, very interesting book. I couldn't put it down, which is ironic because it's, a book that I would probably be reading before I go to bed, which meant that I wasn't getting much sleep because I was just enjoying this book. So it was kind of an ironic period, but it was a very, very good book. I thoroughly recommend it.
Well, thank you, and we will add it to the library. So, Tracey, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing about your work, about your upcoming book. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience? I know that they can find you at puresymmetry.com. You're also probably on LinkedIn, Tracey Grove, Grove. All your information will be posted with this video. Anything else you want to share with our audience?
I would just say, life is such a gift. And I really hope that people reading the book or coming to workshops or seminars or keynotes that I'm doing find something that gives them a sense of hope and gives them a sense of positivity, and knowing that they can really choose how they want to live their lives, because we have no guarantees about tomorrow. So for me, being present is hugely important, and it is a challenge today, but I really hope that people who read the book get something out of it that they can take away that will help them to put their own little stone on the water and make a ripple and change other people's lives in addition to their own.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. And it was a pleasure having you.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Dolores.